if we look at sleep, like if they weren't walking by the time they were 2, you'd go to a physio for, sleep's the same. My view and my passion, and this is all science-based for the last 50 years, is we support our babies to master the skill of sleep. So, with parenting, and again, exhausting, when you've got 3 kids with ADD or whatever, and you're exhausted, you've got nothing at the end of the day. So you've got to sit down with that and just think, okay, this is really, like, make sleep a priority and try and figure out your bedtime routines, winding down and stuff like that, and setting a nice, firm, nurturing boundary. Everything's fixable.
Welcome to the ADHD Families Podcast. I'm your host, Sharon Collin, an award-winning credentialed ADHD coach and consultant, and mama and wife to a very ADHD family. I am seriously obsessed with making life easier for people with ADHD and those that support them. My business, The Functional Family, provides life-changing support and strategies for ADHD. I particularly love anything that saves time, decreases conflict, and creates space for fun. Do you want a life with your beautiful family that is more functional, fun, and full of joy? Let's explore together the wonderful and sometimes wacky world of family life with ADHD in the mix. Welcome to another episode of the ADHD Families Podcast. I am so happy that you are here today. We are chatting about ADHD and sleep. And in this episode, we are focusing in on younger kids for this one. So we are chatting with the incredible Donna Moala. Now, she is a pediatric sleep specialist, and she is going to help us with our beautiful kids that sometimes struggle with getting to sleep, staying asleep, our sleep routines. Donna also shares with us her and her family's ADHD story. And this is a high-paced, full of practical tips episode. Let's get to it. Welcome, Donna. I am so happy to have you on the podcast today.
Welcome to myself. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this. We've been talking quite a lot about ADD and sleep and all sorts of things. So I can't wait to share some stories around it.
Now, this is going to be because I know you, we've worked together a little bit before. I know that you're super high energy and you've got lots of wisdom to share. So I'm sure our audience is going to love that. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about you and your story?
So my story is currently, today, I am a mother of 3 teenage daughters. So they're 18, 16 and 13. I was a stay-at-home mum for 10 years, and that was by choice as my husband built up his physio practice. But there's good and bads with that because I've sort of lost myself, and I was quite happy to be a stay-at-home mum. I didn't have a career to race back to. And then as my eldest started to, get into schooling and things looked quite not the norm. I don't know if that's the right word, but, you look at other people around, you think, oh, she's not talking the same, or, all of those sort of things started to pick up. We were picking up. And so by year 6, she was diagnosed with ADD. So that's been this huge journey for me because she was diagnosed. So as anyone who's probably listening to this who might have had a child that's been diagnosed, I think a high percentage of parents would be going to those pediatric appointments and going, oh my gosh, that's me. Is that not normal? Is that not normal? Oh my gosh. So she's 18 now. So there's been such a long journey with that. All 3 kids have been diagnosed. And instead of looking at it as a negative thing, I'm someone who always just wants to do the best that we can and with what we've got. And they sometimes feel like it might be a negative thing, but I'm like, no, it's not. And so that's been quite a big journey in regards to parenting, understanding my ADD, which as a younger adult had anxiety and sort of mild depression and stuff like that, which is all linked. And like I said, I'm not someone that just sort of sits in that space. I'm like, okay, how can I start feeling better? So that is a lot of research with that. On the other end of that side of being a parent and a mum and going through all of that, I am a sleep specialist, so pediatric sleep specialist. And the reason, I've been doing that for 7 years, but my passion started 18 years ago because sleep is such a priority for our mental health. And so I didn't know that this was going to be my purpose in life, but having ADD, having burnouts all the time, even in my 20s, if I look back, I was pedantic about sleep because if I didn't get great sleep, my anxiety and everything would be way worse. So now I'm living in as a business, which I don't even like to call it my business, it's my passion in life, is watching my children grow up, and still now, they need sleep so much. So what's starting to be talked about a lot, and I don't know if you've heard this because you are in the industry, a lot of people go, ADD kids can't sleep. That's not true. It's actually not true. I've lived it, but it has to be a lot of work and a lot of foundations to create the situations for them to be able to sleep, because kiddos with fast brains need sleep. So that sort of combo of lived experience, we've all got ADD, giving hope to everyone to not be frightened, just be knowledgeable with it. And that's where I'm at with sleep and parenting and all combined. So, and my ADD, which we could talk about forever, but yes, trying to understand that.
Okay, I want to start off there, if that's okay with you, because I've got so many questions. So tell us a little bit about, how you felt. How did you go through the diagnostic process? Yeah, what was the journey like for you?
It was really interesting because I did it slowly, watching and supporting my eldest. And then I just did a lot of research about it. And then what it actually did, when I talk about it, it gives me is I was a highly functioning ADD anxious person, meaning I kept it all in my brain. And if people are listening to this who've got ADD, that's what happens. It's actually when people don't have neurodiverse brains, their brains aren't like that. So I just thought I was dumb. I thought all of these things negatively about myself, but I would portray like I wasn't. Very confident, all that sort of stuff. And just worked extra hard. And there's so many things on reflection that made me feel, like I said, not smart, that now I go, oh, that makes sense. So for example, this is a beauty, is I did high-level piano my whole life to year 12. So instead of doing what was called TEE, I tried out for the Conservatoire of Music. So I was practicing 3 to 4 hours a day for a lot of high school, and I could never memorise a piece. Now, that's not all ADD, because some ADD twice accepted or whatever, where their memories are amazing. With that stuff, it wasn't. And so now I understand my brain. I'm just kinder to myself. I think it's funny now. I just okay, I'm like a Energizer bunny one day, a slob on the couch the next day, whereas I used to push myself through never resting, which then caused burnout. So for me to answer that question, it was actually huge relief because again, I'm sure everybody's heard this. If you look at a lot of famous people and entrepreneurs and awesome people, they have neurodiverse brains. And it is a bit crazy because it's so, oh my gosh, I've got a new idea and I'm going to do it. And then you're so exhausted, and that's the norm. So I think, the biggest thing is understanding. The other massive part about a parent understanding that they may have it, because again, I don't know what the statistics are, but typically there's one parent in the family that will have it.
75%. It's largely genetic.
It's quite high. And so my husband, their father, is high achiever, physio, highly intelligent, great at everything. And so, again, wouldn't have put him on the radar of ADD. But now that we actually understand it, he's something, but he definitely cannot stay still. He has definitely got the traits of hyperactive. And so back in the day, not even that long ago, when Eloise was getting diagnosed, I thought that that's all ADD was hyperactive, naughty kids. But it's not. There's a whole lot of range in there. And so that's, I think, sharing the story that don't be frightened. Like when people come to me and say, oh my gosh, my child's just been diagnosed, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. You've just got to find out what their passion is and they will be fantastic. Don't be frightened of it. And that's the biggest thing. Knowledge is power. So, that's why I found, And I'm medicated. And that's changed. So I've always on and off been medicated on Lexapro from when I became a mum, really, or just before. And on reflection, that was me burning out because I wanted to be perfect and I wanted this to be everything great. So it looks like I've got everything under control, but you never can, ever. And so then I, felt, really harsh on myself. But so I've always been on and off Lexapro, but the last probably 10 years I've been on it solidly. I'm not coming off that anytime soon until my teenagers have possibly left home. But the interesting thing when I got my diagnosis last year, a year and a bit, because I knew I had it, but I wanted to get a proper psychiatric assessment. He said to me, this is what's happening. You don't just all of a sudden get diagnosed with ADD in your older life, or adult ADD. He's saying there's no such thing. You've always had it. And so we overcompensate, which I did my whole life, for this different way that our brains think. So that's why it causes the anxiety and depression, because it's too much to keep up. And so that I'm on short-acting dexamphetamines. I've tried all different stuff, and it is a game changer. Absolute game changer. And it might not be for everybody. You know, like my middle child hates it and is literally refusing it. And that's totally fine. But my eldest is in uni and wants to be in uni and knows that it works. And so that's the journey I'm on. Like, I'm not forcing my child to do it if they don't want to. But I know that it just gets rid of the noise. Like, it's so crazy. And so, yeah, I'm very happily medicated.
That is such a lovely thing to let people know, because I think people have a lot of concerns about medication. Yeah, and so it's really great to hear a positive experience as well. And, you know,
absolutely. And the thing is with that, let's take a step back too. I'm talking with such positivity now, but we've been through hell and back with our kids' mental health and stuff, so that's another whole story. But this has not been an easy road. You know, I want to talk about hope and share my stories for if people are in a really difficult situation and feel like there's no hope because it's really challenging and no one else understands. Just reach out for more help. Like, you will get there. But with Eloise, when she first went to take that first medication, so none of us had been medicated other than my Lexapro, and she didn't want to. And I was like, I think it's going to be good for you. Like, I don't really know. Like, I sort of had to jump off that cliff. And so I was frightened of it before. But like I said, the interesting stuff is my eldest has just got into uni and loving it and needs it, and she can feel it. My middle just wants to be a hairdresser. And I'm like, not even just, that's the wrong word, wants to be into beauty or hairdressing. I'm like, great, that's great. Don't take your medication, you know?
Yeah, and it's so individual, and that's the whole thing, that you're empowering your kids to have choice, which I think is great. It's great. So something you said a little bit before was talking about what we see in something I work with people a lot in coaching, is that boom or bust cycle, and you described it as burnout there. So you talked about, you know, like masking, going too hard, like trying to, with that perfectionist tendencies, which we see a lot in high achieving, especially women. I think it might just be because I work with a lot of women.
Yes.
So
statistically, in your statistics.
Yes. So we see this like crest of the wave, right? Where we go up and we're doing all right, we're getting everything out, and then it crashes, like the wave breaks, and then it goes up, and then we see the crash. And so one of the trickier things that we work with people on is recognizing when they're getting to the crest of the wave, like where they're getting to the burnout cycle, where the wave's going to crash. Do you think now, looking back at those burnout cycles, were you able to see them coming, or did they always surprise you?
Oh, definitely. I feel so sorry for old Donna. Like, I lived on cortisol all the time. Like, my body was just pinging with cortisol and I get sick all the time. And on reflection, absolutely. But, you know, the biggest thing, again, it's not just the medication. I have had life coaching. I've been to psychologists. Whenever I'm feeling that things are unraveling, I will get support. Like, I'm big on support. You can't do it by yourself. You just can't. People don't understand. It's very lonely in our heads. And so now, so I'm 49. So it's really only just probably been in the last few years, because, you know, it's parenting teenagers and sort of figuring that out, is this is going to sound really boring. But once you start feeling that pressure, you got to stop. You got to start saying no. You've got to rest more. And that's what's hard. When you're an ADD person, I think we're so hard on ourselves to lay down, and like, that's just lazy, and because we've been told things our whole life. Where now I had to have a life coach me to go, Donna, you're tired. Go and go. And I'm like, really? Have a sleep in the day? So it's like actually accepting that that's how we work. Like, instead of like burnout, whatever, it's like, yep, I'm feeling the pressure. I stopped taking clients. I don't see people for a while, but not for a while, not negatively, like I'm not seeing anyone, just I need to sleep, I need to rest, I need to go put my feet in the grass and just go back to being grounded as that's moving up. So I used to go and then crash, and then it would take me weeks to get back up to here. And so that doesn't happen anymore. I have stress. I've learned and got the tools how to deal with stress because we are super sensitive to that stuff too. And it's changed the children's dynamic, like the whole dynamic of the family has been me being able to regulate that better for sure.
Interesting. Okay. So now I wanted to ask you about, your work, because I know that you are a pediatric sleep specialist. You go in and you help families that their kids can't sleep. And we know that sleep is a contentious topic for our community. So we've got medication side effects like not being able to sleep. We've got like my kids who are like, hey, how about it, 9 o'clock at night when you're putting me down to sleep, I'll now discuss all the meaning of life with you. So there's lots of stalling tactics. And then there's also just people are exhausted. Like the parents are exhausted. So they don't have the capacity to be, Mother Teresa at that time. So it's kind of a vulnerable time for parents. So can you give any, firstly, I'd love to explain a little bit more about what you actually do for people, and then we can go into it from there.
Well, I could talk about this forever because my passion is sleep, and it comes from lived experience of anxiety in my children, and they're a perfect example of ADD kids that could sleep and can sleep because I've supported them to master that. So when we're in a situation now and it's really quickly evolving, I'm continually changing my approach because we parent different. We're busier. It's not anyone's fault. It's just life. Our kids have to fit into what we want more because we've got to go to work. They've got to go to daycare. They don't want to go to daycare. There's a whole lot of stuff there. Then parents feel guilty. Then the kids start misbehaving because that's how they get the attention. So there's all of this stuff going on. Now, if you've got a label of ADD, very easy to go, well, they're just not regulating because they've got ADD, right? I would take that off I would typically not take it off the table, but when it comes to sleep, kind of take it off the table and look more at the biological part of what humans can do. Now, what we're biologically made to do. Now, when you've got an ADD child that's medicated, it is tough for sure because my kids didn't get medicated till much later, but still we were very careful of when they stopped it, and you can see the impact of the sleep if they had the medication too late. So it's definitely working out that, because if you're going to have an extra dose of short acting when they come home from school, very hard for them to go to sleep, right? But that often what happens with the crash when they come home from school, doctors say have that one to get them through, which then impacts the sleep for sure. But you've got to work with that for sure. But when it comes to sleep, all that you've just said, Ben, is just typically normal anyway. So what we do in our busy, crazy lives is we've got to try and be one step ahead, meaning when our kiddos are going to go to sleep, it is the time that they will start thinking and then they want to talk to you, right? So then if you know that that's going to happen, then you try and bring bedtime earlier, like 7:30, and sit with them and you tell them a bit about your day. So it's basically what I do with families. I only work one-on-one because of this reason, because everything's so diverse and so different these days. Our babies are different. I think they've got a sixth sense. It's crazy. But if we look at sleep, if they weren't walking by the time they were 2, you'd go to a physio for, sleep's the same. My view and my passion, and this is all science-based for the last 50 years, is we support our babies to master the skill of sleep. So, with parenting, and again, exhausting, when you've got 3 kids with ADD or whatever, and you're exhausted, you've got nothing at the end of the day. So you've got to sit down with that and just think, okay, this is really, make sleep a priority and try and figure out your bedtime routines, winding down and stuff like that, and setting a nice, firm, nurturing boundary. Everything's fixable. Not very often have I been able to support families to get babies to sleep or kids to sleep. I work with kids up to 7 years of age. And what I'm finding now is our kids had anxiety, and that was a little bit rarer. Now, all kids feel like they've got some kind of, because their little brains should have just been growing up on a farm and, playing with dogs and blah, blah, blah. But they're made to go to school. They've got iPads in year 2 and their brains are just completely frazzled, even if it's not neurodiverse. Then add in a neurodiverse brain they're exhausted all the time. So you think about, I think about myself when I have to think a lot, I'm exhausted, right? So when I'm using my brain a lot, they're doing that as young kids because they're expected to do so much in school. And when I grew up, I don't even know if my parents knew what we were learning, but our day and age now as parents, we have this fear that they've got to be good at this and they've got to be good at that and they need to do the homework and they need to be really good at maths. Take it off the table. Like, just really connect with your child, and the more you connect with them, with their personality, you'll see things change and they'll be calmer. And yeah, it's all about nurturing connection and stuff around sleep as well. But yeah.
I love that you said sleep as a skill. So just like we teach our kids, we help support them how to walk, we have to teach them the right way to get to sleep, right?
That's right. We support them and nurture them to learn the skill.
Yeah.
Because there's so much BS out there around sleep training, and I know it's a really negative situation because there's so many it's a flooded, unregulated industry, and a lot of people are still doing cry it out and stuff. I don't do any of that. It's about connection and nurturing and supporting and regulating our emotions so they can learn how to regulate. And sleep is like a miracle. A well-rested ADD kid is much better the next day. Be able to regulate a bit better. So it's super important. And if people are listening and they're having troubles and their kids are up to 7 years of age, know that there's an answer. Know that there is something where we can support them to learn to sleep well.
Okay, so I wanted to have a chat to you now about sleep studies because, so you would come across this in your industry, of course, where we've got kids that have breathing issues, tongue ties, all sorts of reflux, all sorts of things going on. What point should people consider getting a sleep study done?
So again, I've been doing this for over 7 years and helped thousands and thousands of families. I think I've got one person to do a sleep study, which is crazy. So all of those things, reflux, I can help with reflux. For example, I could help with refluxy babies if the reflux is under control, meaning probably medication, and the parent can see that Bub isn't in pain anymore. They can master the skill of sleep. I've helped lots of families that are going to an ENT because they've got big tonsils and adenoids. I can still work with them. Mouth breathers, I can still work with them. Really, what would happen to get a sleep study is that I would have worked intensely for a month with my families and not got the progress. So it's very rare to need a sleep study. I mean, unless you can see that they're stopping breathing, like that sort of thing. ENT sleep study for sure.
Okay. So thinking about, how parents present to you at this, so thinking about older kids now, because I think a lot of our listeners perhaps are past the newborn bit, and we're looking at slightly older kids. How are parents contacting you, and what are they presenting? What are the things that they're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of same but different, but just wrapped in a different package. So basically, I offer a free 15-minute chat, which I love doing because it just gives people a little bit of food for thought. It's not a sales call. It's just like there's so much noise out there. It's like, okay, tell me about it. So my first question is always, is anything medically diagnosed? Your personality of the child, all that sort of stuff. So pretty quickly I can pick up what the child's like. I had a family that I just finished with, a 4-year-old. This is a really good example. The parents were exhausted, never slept, hyper anxious child, up all night, comes in their room screaming, and they were just at the end. And they're like, I don't think it's going to work, but, we're exhausted. And in my mind, I'm thinking maybe it won't. But, by setting up these boundaries and foundations with love and nurture, not only was it about their sleep, but I'm a conscious parenting coach as well. That's my new certification. And it's about it's connection with your children and being conscious and aware of what's happening as a parent. And it all went. So not only did they think he had anxiety, they actually thought he could be diagnosed. They said, their cousins got ADD and autism. And I said, okay, maybe. And so I ask all of these questions in 15 minutes. And so it's always the same thing. And it always feels like the same thing as parents are feeling really lost. And they just don't know where to go. They feel like they should know because there's so much information out there. But I'm like, I'm a specialist. Like if you had problems with breastfeeding, you'd go to a lactation consultant. Like I'm a specialist in sleep. So don't feel like you should or could do it even. But that's my go-to is like health, what they feel the personality of the baby is, what's going on with them, and then give them that hope of what we can do, which is supporting them to be able to master that skill of sleep.
And do you think a lot of it is actually, helping the parents manage their emotions?
Probably 99.9%. But that's okay, because that was me. And again, this conscious parenting that I'm certified in, it's not to make parents feel guilty at all. It's actually just being aware of our triggers and whys and wounds and, how to deal with these things. Because where I was with our kids a couple of years ago and they suffered with severe mental health, I'm not blaming myself. I've had to go through a little bit of guilt process, but I couldn't regulate. I was so stressed. I was so fearful that they were going to be, prostitutes and drug dealers. Well, really, that's just
I love it how everyone goes to that.
Oh, why do we go to that? But, and that's what I want to share, and why I wanted to get certified in it, to share with parents, is like the more we can figure ourselves out. And like something happened today with one of my daughters that she's actually been my teacher, the one that's made me want to do the conscious parenting. And the old me would have been like, oh no, we're a little stress, late, because I couldn't regulate. But this morning she got up late, she was really distressed, and I just really calmly said, it's all right, Dal, like stuff that I thought I should have been doing before but couldn't because I wasn't regulated. And the whole morning was so much different, and we got connected and stuff. So in a roundabout way, I'm trying to explain is that it is supporting parents to be empowered to be the best they can, because it's hard. And having neurodiverse one child or three children is harder, and we can't pretend that it's not. So we have to parent harder, not harder like with control, harder as in connection, and like, I'm not getting anything back. She just swore at me, but I'm going to say, please don't speak to me like that, and then deal, like rather than don't speak to me like that, disrespectful, because that's what we were brought traditionally. Like I was a good girl because I had to be. Whereas now these kids are like, no, I'm not doing what you say. And then the more you say no, then they say no louder. So it's like, okay, how do we adjust that?
So I have to share a story. So all my boys have been refluxes. And when I had my third, I was so tired because he was such a terrible sleeper. They were all terrible sleepers. It was like just years of just no sleeping. So I was so tired, and I have seen a sleep consultant for, I think, pretty much every single one of my kids, just to get a fresh approach on it, because I'm so tired. You start to get question all your judgment about everything. And the third child, I was like hallucinating. I was so tired. I couldn't sleep during the day. I had little ones at home. I was starting to see dark shadows coming out of corners and stuff. It was torture. And anyway, I ended up saying to my husband, I was like, something's going to happen here. Because my husband drives a truck, so he can't, he wasn't going to do nighttime, because otherwise he was going to have an accident. And so then I was like, okay, something has to change. And we got in a night nurse for one night, and I just took a sleeping tablet and knocked me out. And that one night of getting sleep changed everything, because I was able to get a night's sleep, and then I had her number if I needed to call her for more nights. And there was so much, and it changed my whole perception from I can't take it, I can't do this, to I can do this, I've got a get out of jail card that I could swing anytime I wanted, right? Didn't need to swing it all that much, but I just needed to have that night of catch up sleep. It was all mindset. It was all my mind. And then I found the baby easier. We changed our relationship. It was just, sleep is so important.
It is so important, and people forget that. The thing is, we're also, and again, I'm not being negative here because we're all like it, we're martyrs. Us mums is like, why don't we get the help, or why don't we get a night nurse in? Why do we do it? I never used to ask. The only time I've ever asked for help is when a couple of years ago with one of the teenagers, because it was so tough. I've never, not that people didn't help me, but I mean, I'm desperate, I need your help. And because it's like a sign of I thought it was a sign of weakness, which was stupid. But this is the passion that I have around sleep. What I'm finding is, and I have got friends that are early childhood teachers and sensational, in their mid-50s, and the children have changed. There are way more diagnosable issues. There are way more behavioural issues, and the parents don't know what to do. And so it's we just need to have the tools to be able to do it. But the thing is, parents are exhausted, and they're having to go to work even if they don't want to. And if you get sleep, it changes everything. And you can get sleep. That's the thing, is like, people don't know, like, that a lot of people don't know I exist, but it's like, this is doable. I had sick kids, I had ADD kids, and they are the best sleepers. Like, they nap all the time now. I'm like, go have a nap. Come on, that's excellent.
Because it's a skill that they've been taught, right? So what would you say to a parent, like perhaps they've got kids that just like cannot get them to sleep, right? Or they're waking up, or they're co-sleeping, but perhaps like it's okay if the parents are okay with it, but if it's not working, because I co-slept with my children for like a night, and it was the most awful night's sleep I've ever had, because they do not stop moving.
No, that's wrong. That's right. I couldn't do that.
It was too much. But tell me, what would you say? Like, what some tips that you can give them to help them where they're at now?
Reach out for a 15-minute chat. I can run you through that, of course, and doing the one-on-one. But the biggest thing is, again, they're also different challenges. But let's just take, for example, you've got older kiddos that suffer from a bit of anxiety, which they may have been diagnosed with ADD. So the anxiety is just an overthinking brain. So we've got to look at all of that. And instead of going, just get over it, or I'm sure parents, I'm not having a go if they do, and everyone's exhausted, it's like, you try not to feed into the fear. You've got to kind of keep saying, it's okay, I'm here, kind of thing. Like, I don't know how to summarize that, because what happens, and what I did, is like rush. I was a stay-at-home mum and I was burnt out. So God knows if I had to work. But like that high-pressured stuff of whingy, whiny kids, they've come home from school, they don't want to eat their dinner, they're fighting, like this stuff happens. It's like trying to take that step back if that happens, and you've got a little window to be kind to yourself. Like I said, go and hug a tree. Go do some box breathing. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but that's what saved me. Like, in chaos, I'd be like, I'm going to be coming back. And they're like, where are you going? Or not even, and then I'd go and box breathe too. I could regulate. Come back out. So get through that chaos. But when it comes to bedtime, I don't know how many children you've got or what situation it is that you've got another caregiver or whatever, you've got to try and figure out time to have that one-on-one with the child. I know if you've got 3, my husband was at home at night, I had to figure it out, but I'm just saying, connection before correction. So think that in your head, they're driving me insane. Okay, but they're feeling disconnected. Try to be connected, and connection before correction, but super strong boundaries. Don't give in to, so bedtime's bedtime at a certain time, right? So you've got your routine that you might have a book in the bed with that child, and they know the routine. So very clear on routine, because ADD kids work very well with secure boundaries. So they know what's coming next. If they don't know what's coming next, that's where their anxiety gets worse. Have that individual time if you can, and then you need to spend that 5 or 10 minutes in their room with them. And I wouldn't probably lay in bed with them. I'd probably sit on a chair next to them, and you might talk about your days to get it going. And but don't give in to any requests and demands. So what happens, for example, they might ask for water, or they've got a cut on their thumb, and all the million things. Then the next night you give them a drink of water, you put a Band-Aid on their thumb, and so you stay ahead of whatever they're asking. So when they say, I need a drink of water, instead of saying no, you just say, you just had some, darling, you have some in the morning. So it's like keeping really strong, loving boundaries, not giving in to any requests and demands. Keep the boundaries, and they should, over a week or 2, get used to that new. So it's like we just get so exhausted and want things to, I used to read my book really fast because I wanted to get out of the room, but it's like, slow down. Give them that extra bit of time. It doesn't have to be, half an hour, but enough. And then the boundary's strong. Like, no, darling, just try not to use the word no around the sleep as well. So it's like, instead of saying no, darling, say, mummy will be back in a minute. Mummy's going to the toilet. Like, just keeping strong boundaries around it, and giving it at least 2 weeks of the new foundations to see the changes. Nighttime wakings is frustrating and hard as well, but it's the same sort of thing. You've got to, bring them back to bed, and sort of keep the boundary. So strong, supporting, nurturing boundaries would be my best thing.
So can we talk quickly about night terrors? Because this is something that's big in our community. Can you explain to our beautiful listeners what a night terror is? Where do they come from? What should we do?
Okay. So night terrors would be something that if you're finding them consistently happening, that would be a reason to go to a sleep study for sure. Now, what I'm finding over the last few years, night terrors are quite rare, So I think people feel like they're night terrors. Maybe they are. Go to a sleep study place. Night terrors are you cannot wake them. They are hysterical, and sometimes waking them makes it worse or whatever. So that's a night terror. Nightmare is they're unhappy, but they can sort of be woken. The biggest thing around this is, what are they watching? How much are they watching during the day? I'm not anti anything, but remembering there's a lot more on phones and iPads and things that they can see, bringing it really back to just TV. Why do they need an iPad? Why, like my biggest thing with all the disaster stuff that happens in our family with our children is we were the beginnings of really the smartphones. So Eloise being 18, it only just sort of Instagram and stuff was just getting busier. Molly, it has destroyed her. And we're coming out of that, but they don't need it. They don't need it until, like, if you can hold it off to 13 would be great. So really make the conscious decision of no phone, no iPads, like TV, good old TV. Like that does not mess up the brain as much as what they're seeing on iPads and phones. And I know when you're exhausted and it's the only way to have a break, I get it, use the TV. Because what's happening is they're overactive brains. And so they are, at night when we go to sleep, our neural pathways are being developed. So we're learning, and everything's getting taken out of your brain that's not going to stay in there. So when you're getting overstimulated during the day, that can contribute to night terrors. Too hot, if they're too hot, that's a big thing as well. Don't overheat. And also food. Too sugary, too whatever, got to sort of look at the foods. So again, if anyone feels like that's happening, everyone's more than welcome to book in for a call because I can run through all of that.
So when it's actually happening, what do you recommend we do?
I would still go in.
Yeah, go in, but you're not trying to wake them. You're just trying to guide them back into bed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that might just be there for them, in case they start walking or whatever, or, I'd still just be calm and just, it's okay, mum's here, or it's only a nightmare, like have that, because in deep back in their conscious or subconscious, they hopefully can start hearing your calming voice.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much for today, because you have shared so much gold with us. Can you tell our beautiful listeners where to find you?
Oh, yes, I can. So my business is called Bub to Sleep. I feel like I need to change that name because it's not just about bubs. But I also think our children are our bubs, aren't they? But Bub to Sleep. So all your platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, on any of those platforms, you can book in for that free 15-minute chat. It's absolutely not a sales conversation. I love giving people food for thought and some hope. I do one-on-ones, which I love, but I also have a parenting collective membership where people have daily access to me for parenting and sleep conversations. It's a very nurturing, safe space. We share lots of stories in there. That's about it. And my podcast, we've got a podcast. So, yes, lots of things going on around the sleep and parenting world.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Donna.
No worries. Thank you so much. I love sharing my stories to you. So hopefully I've been able to, share some wisdom for people for hope.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the ADHD Families Podcast. If you loved it, please share it on your socials. I want this to start a conversation about ADHD. If you want to make this mum do a little happy dance, please leave a review on iTunes. If you would like to know more about what we do, check out thefunctionalfamily.com. I truly hope that you enjoyed this podcast and you use it to create a wonderful, effective, joyful life with your beautiful children.